Highlights of Parat 21, Part 21 of the Holy Quran. There are 4 parts in this para. Surah Ankabut, remaining part, complete Surah Rum, complete Surah Luqman, complete Surah Sajda and initial part of Surah Ahzab. Surah Ankabut. There are 4 things in the remaining part of Surah Ankabut. Order of recitation and prayer, the virtues of prayer, that it impedes us from evil and indecency, mention of recalcitrance of opponents and the volatility of the world. Surah Rum reminds us that Allah is in control of everything. Those who are short-sighted, they see only what is apparent, but they do not realize that there is a creator and master of this whole universe, and it is He who is governing everything. Final decision is in Allah's hand. The Akhirah will take place and the truth will prevail. In Surah Luqman, Tawhid is emphasized and Shirk and its ideas are critically examined. It tells us that those who are following Shirk, they are only blindly following their forefathers. The true wisdom is to believe in Allah. The advices of Luqman the wise are also given here to support the same principles. Surah As-Sajda discusses some of the doubts and arguments of the non-believers against the principles of Tawhid, Risala, and Akhirah. It invites human beings to think and reflect on their own selves and on the nature surrounding them. Everything points that there is a wise and powerful creator for this universe. He has not created all this phenomenon in vain. The creation has a purpose. Surah Al-Ahzab deals with a number of social and political issues. It talks about the practice of child adoption, some marriage customs, Battle of Ahzab and Bani Qurayza, social issues related to hijab of Muslim women. It also talks about the hypocrites and their conduct in the society. Sections. Give the message of Allah in the best way, warnings to the non-believers, the truth will succeed. Allah guides the steps of those who follow the right path, the defeat of the Romans and then later their victory is foretold, creation and resurrection belong to Allah. Glorify Allah at different times of the day, the signs of Allah in nature, the true religion corresponds and enhances the nature. Teachings of the religion of nature, Tawhid, care of the family and relatives, economic justice and charity, corruption caused by human beings. Evidence of corruption in history. Evidence of resurrection in nature, the day of resurrection. Quran is a book of guidance and mercy for all people, the advices of Luqman, the wise man, signs of Tawhid in the heaven and earth. Shirk or polytheism has no basis, in crisis people turn to the real God. Let not the things of this world deceive you. All knowledge belongs to Allah, the Quran is from the Lord of the worlds. Allah created this whole universe. He created human beings, but some human beings deny the resurrection, the difference between the believers and non-believers, the mission of Prophet Moses. Take lessons from the history of other nations. Signs of resurrection in nature, the custom of adoption and Islamic instructions about it. Prophet Muhammad, is dearer to the believers than their own selves, the Battle of Ahzab and the way of the hypocrites and the excellent role model of the Prophet Muhammad, Surah Ar-Rum. Ayah's revelation place. 60 Makkah. Name. The surah takes its name Ar-Rum from the second verse in which the words Golibat Ar-Rum have occurred. Period of revelation. 615 AD. Therefore, it can be said with absolute certainty that the surah was sent down in the same year, and this was the year in which the migration to Habash took place. Historical background. The prediction made in the initial verses of the surah is one of the most outstanding evidences of the Quran's being the word of Allah and the Holy Prophet Muhammad being a true messenger of Allah. Let us have a look at the historical background relevant to the verses. When this surah of the Quran was sent down, and in it a prediction was made, saying the Romans have been vanquished in the neighboring land and within a few years after their defeat, they shall be victorious. And it will be the day when the believers will rejoice in the victory granted by Allah. It contained not one but 2 predictions: first, the Romans shall be victorious, and second, the Muslims also shall win a victory at the same time. After this no one could have any doubt about the truth of the prophecy of the Quran, with the result that most of the Arab polytheists accepted Islam. The heirs of Ubay bin Khalaf lost their bet and had to give 100 camels to Hadrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. He took them before the Holy Prophet, who ordered that they be given away in charity, because the bet had been made at a time when gambling had not yet been forbidden by the Shari/Ah, now it was forbidden. Therefore, the bet was allowed to be accepted from the belligerent disbelievers, but instruction given that it should be given away in charity and should not be brought in personal use. Theme and subject matter. The discourse begins with the theme that the Romans have been overcome and the people the world over think that the empire is about to collapse, but the fact is that within a few years the tables will be turned and the vanquished will again become victorious. Whenever man has adopted this deviation, chaos has resulted. Again here, an allusion has been made to the great chaos that had gripped the world on account of the war between the two major powers of the time, and it has been indicated that this chaos too, is the result of shirk, and all the nations who were ever involved in mischief and chaos in the history of mankind were also mushriks. In conclusion, a parable has been presented to make the people understand that just as dead earth comes to life, all of a sudden, by a shower of rain sent by God and swells with vegetation and plant life, so is the case with the dead humanity. When God sends a shower of His mercy in the form of revelation and prophethood, it also gives a new life to mankind and causes it to grow and develop and flourish. Therefore, if you take full advantage of this opportunity, the barren land of Arabia will bloom by Allah's mercy and the whole advantage will be yours. But if you do not take advantage of it, you will harm only yourselves. Then no regret will avail and no opportunity will be provided to make amends. Surah Luqman. Ayah's revelation place. 34 Makkah. Name. The surah has been named Luqman after Luqman the sage, whose admonitions to his son have been related in verses 12 to 19 of the surah. Period of revelation. It was sent down in the period when persecution to suppress and thwart the invitation to Islam had begun. The same thing has been said in Surah Al-Ankabut, which indicates that both these surahs were sent down in the same period. A study of the style and subject matter of the two surahs on the whole, however, shows that Surah Luqman was sent down earlier. While studying Surah Al-Ankabut, one can clearly feel that the Muslims were being severely persecuted during the period of its revelation. Theme and subject matter. In this surah the people have been made to understand the meaninglessness and absurdity of shirk and the truth and reasonableness of tawhid, and they have been invited to give up blind imitation of their forefathers. The learned and wise people of the past ages said and taught the same thing which Muhammad, upon whom be Allah's peace, is teaching today. It is as if to say, O people, in your own country there has lived a wise man, named Luqman, whose wisdom has been well known among you. Surah As-Sajdah. Ayah's revelation place. 30 Makkah. Name. The surah has been entitled As-Sajdah after the theme of sajda, prostration, as expressed in verse 15. Period of revelation. It was sent down during the Middle Makkah period. Theme and topics. The main theme of the surah is to remove the doubts of the people concerning tawhid, the hereafter and the prophethood, and to invite them to all these three realities. Then they have been told, it is Allah's supreme mercy that He does not seize man immediately for his errors to punish him finally and decisively, but warns him beforehand by afflicting him with small troubles and hardships and calamities and losses and strokes of misfortune so that he may wake up and take admonition. Same will happen now as has already happened in the time of Moses. Leadership now will be bestowed only on those who will accept this divine book. Those who reject it shall be doomed to failure. The disbelievers of Makkah have been admonished to the effect, see the end of the doomed communities of the past by whose ruined habitations you passed during your trade journeys. In conclusion, the Holy Prophet has been addressed to the effect, these people mock at what you say and ask as to when you will attain this decisive victory. Tell them, when the time comes for the final judgment regarding you and us, believing then will not profit you at all. If you have to believe, believe now. But if you intend to await the final judgment, then await it as you please. Surah Al-Ahzab. Ayah's revelation place. 73 Medina. Name. The surah derives its name Al-Ahzab from verse 20. Period of revelation. The surah discusses three important events, which are, the Battle of the Trench, or Al-Ahzab, the clans, which took place in Shawwal, AH 5, the raid on Bani Qurayza, which was made in Dhil Qa'dah, AH 5, and the Holy Prophet's marriage with Hadrat Zainab, which also was contracted in Dhil Qa'dah, AH 5. These historical events accurately determine the period of the revelation of the surah. Historical background. However, it was the Holy Prophet's determination and wisdom and his great companion's spirit of sacrifice that changed these adverse conditions completely within a short span of time. The economic boycott by the Arabs had made life hard for the people of Medina. All the polytheistic tribes around Medina were becoming rebellious. Inside Medina itself, the Jews and the hypocrites were beat upon mischief. But the successive steps taken by a handful of the sincere Muslims, under the leadership of the Holy Prophet, not only restored the image of strength of Islam in Arabia but also increased it manifold. The Battle of the Trench. Such it was in fact a combined raid by many of the Arab tribes, who wanted to crush the power of Medina. It had been instigated by the leaders of the Bani an-Nadir, who had settled in Khyber after their banishment from Medina. They went round to the Quraysh and Ghatafan and Hudayl and many other tribes and induced them to gather all their forces together and attack Medina jointly. Even before the enemy could reach his city, he got a trench dug out on the northwest of Medina in 6 days, and having the Mount Sal at their back, took up a defensive position with 3,000 men in the protection of the trench. To the south of Medina there were many gardens, even now there are, so that it could not be attacked from that side. To the east there are lava rocks which are impassable for a large army. The same is the case with the southwestern side. The attack, therefore, could be made only from the eastern and western sides of the Uhud, which the Holy Prophet had secured by digging a trench. One alternative remained with the disbelievers, to incite the Jewish tribe of Bani Qurayza, who inhabited the southeastern part of the city, to rebellion. As the Muslims had entered a treaty with them that in case of an attack on Medina they would defend the city along with them, the Muslims had made no defensive arrangement there and had even sent their families to take shelter in the Bani Qurayza were persuaded to break the treaty. The Holy Prophet received news of this. He at once told Sa'd bin Ubadah, Sa'd bin Mu'ad, Abdullah bin Rawaha and Kuway bin Jubair, chiefs of the Ansar, to go and find out the truth. He advised Bani Qurayza, "There is no agreement and no treaty between us and Muhammad." At this they returned to the Islamic army and submitted their report to the Holy Prophet, saying, Adal and Qura. That is, the Qurayza are bent upon doing what the Adal and Qura had done with the preachers of Islam at Rajai. This news spread among the Muslims and caused great consternation among them. They had also sent their families to take shelter in the forts. The siege was prolonged for more than 25 days. It was winter. The supply of food and water and forage was becoming more and more scarce every day, and division in the camp was also a great strain on the state of morale of the besiegers. Then, suddenly one night a severe windstorm accompanied by thunder and lightning hit the camp. It added to the cold and darkness. The wind overthrew the tents and put the enemy in disarray. They could not stand this severe blow of nature. They left the battleground even during the night and returned to their homes. When the Muslims awoke in the morning, there was not a single enemy soldier to be seen on the battlefield. The Holy Prophet, finding the battlefield completely empty, said, "The Quraysh will never be able to attack you after this, now you will take the offensive." This was a correct assessment of the situation. Not only the Quraysh but the united front of all the enemy tribes had made their final assault against Islam and had failed. Now they could no longer dare invade Medina, now the Muslims were on the offensive. Raid on Bani Qurayza. When the Holy Prophet returned from the trench, Gabriel came to him in the early afternoon with the divine command that the Muslims should not lay aside the arms yet but should deal with the Bani Qurayza as well. On receipt of this command, the Holy Prophet got announced, "Everyone who is steadfast in obedience should not offer his Asr prayer till he reaches the locality of the Bani Qurayza." Immediately after this, he dispatched Hadrat Ali with a contingent of soldiers as vanguard towards the Qurayza. When they reached there, the Jews climbed onto their rooftops and started hurling abuses on the Holy Prophet and the Muslims, but their invectives could not save them from the consequences of their treachery. They had committed breach of the treaty right at the most critical moment of the war, joined hands with the invaders and endangered the entire population of Medina. When they saw the contingent of Hadrat Ali, they thought that they had come only to overawe them. But when the whole Islamic army arrived under the command of the Holy Prophet himself and laid siege to their quarters, they were very frightened. They could not stand the severity of the siege for more than 2 or 3 weeks. At last, they surrendered themselves to the Holy Prophet on the condition that they would accept whatever decision Hadrat Sa'd bin Mu'adh, the chief of the AUS, would give. They had accepted Hadrat Sa'd as their judge because in the pre-Islamic days the AUS and the Qurayza had been confederates, and they hoped that in view of the past ties he would help them quit Medina, as had happened in the case of the Bani Qaynuqa and the Bani an-Nadir before. The people of the AUS themselves wished that Hadrat Sa'd treat their previous allies leniently. But Hadrat Sa'd had just experienced and seen how the 2 Jewish tribes who had been allowed to leave Medina previously had instigated the other tribes living around Medina and summoned a united front of 10,000 to 12,000 men against the Muslims. He was also aware how treacherously this last Jewish tribe had behaved right on the occasion when the city was under attack from outside and threatened the safety of the whole of its population. Therefore, he decreed that all the male members of the Qurayza should be put to death. Social reforms. Though the period of 2 years between the battles of Uhud and the Trench was a period of disturbance and turmoil, and the Holy Prophet and his companions could hardly relax in peace and security even for a day, the work of reform as a whole and the reconstruction of the Muslim society continued uninterrupted. This was the time when the Islamic laws pertaining to marriage and divorce were complemented, the law of inheritance was introduced, drinking and gambling were prohibited, and the new laws and regulations concerning many other aspects of the economic and social life were enforced. The Islamic law of marriage and divorce, the law of inheritance and the law of the prohibition of adultery required that the concept and custom of regarding the adopted son as the real son should be eradicated completely. A little before the Battle of the Trench, the Holy Prophet was inspired by Allah that he should marry the divorced wife of his adopted son, Zayd bin Haritha, may Allah be pleased with him, and he acted on this command during the siege of the Bani Qurayza. The delay probably was caused for the reason that the prescribed waiting period had not yet ended, and in the meantime the Holy Prophet had to become busy in the preparation for war. Preliminary commandments of Purdah. This was precisely the occasion when the reformative commandments pertaining to the law of hijab or Purdah were first enforced in the Islamic society. These reforms were introduced in the surah and complemented a year later in Surah An-Nur, when a slander was made on the honor of Hadrat Aisha. For further details, see Introduction to Surah An-Nur. Domestic affairs of the Holy Prophet. During the first 4 years he had no source of income whatever. In 4AH, after the banishment of the Bani an-Nadir, a portion of their evacuated lands was reserved for his use by the command of Allah, but it was not enough for his family requirements. On the other hand, the duties of the office of prophethood were so onerous that they were absorbing all his energies of the mind and body and heart and every moment of his time, and he could not make any effort at all for earning his livelihood. In conditions such as these, when his wives happened to disturb his mental peace because of economic hardships, he would feel doubly strained and taxed. Subject matter and topics. A perusal of the theme and the background shows that the surah is not a single discourse which was sent down in one piece, but it consists of several injunctions and commandments and discourses, which were sent down, one after the other, in connection with the important events of the time, and then were put together in one surah. Its following parts stand out clearly distinguished from one another.